Test, test, test. Can you hear me? I saw some people saying that they thought Fireside was like a secret project or something. Maybe that's like a American reference. The Fireside chats were a series of radio broadcasts during the Great Depression in America that the president at the time, Franklin Roosevelt, gave to try to comfort people or explain policies and stuff. So it's not a secret project. That's what it was in reference to. Well, the TV behind me is just a screensaver because my remote died, and so I guess I couldn't turn the TV off really. So I'm just waiting for it to turn off. I guess I can unplug it. So hopefully everybody's doing well. This is just kind of me hanging out and answering questions and just talking a little bit about what we've been up to at Laravel. Kind of like I used to do on the podcast, but in video form. So we've kind of been, or I've kind of been trying to restructure how we do some work at Laravel itself and how we sort of organize projects. Part of it is kind of based around how Basecamp themselves do things with their shape up process. And we already use Basecamp mainly for like daily check-ins for the message board threads, stuff like that. We also use Slack for like real-time communication, but sometimes it's just, if we're talking about like a pretty serious feature, it's nice to do it as a message board threads because it gives more time for people to think and respond instead of just like boom, 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 chat messages, and we're sort of not really thinking things through very clearly. So anyways, for this next week is starting the first time we've ever done like a 5 or 6 week sprint on like a predefined list of things that we want to get done. So we're going to be trying that out starting next week. Of course, Dries will still mainly be focusing on open source stuff. He's working on Stripe checkout support and Cashier and various other kind of open source maintenance type things. James is going to be continuing to work on Forge. We're going to try to improve the provisioning progress and the deployment progress. So like right now when you provision a server in Forge, it just says provisioning for like the whole 10 minutes or whatever it takes to provision a server on DigitalOcean or Amazon. And if we want to add more like granular information about what we're actually doing during that time, like are we installing MySQL? Are we installing PHP? Stuff like that. And kind of the same thing on the deployment stuff is our plan is to try to show a list of historical deployments, kind of like we would on Vapor or Envoy. And so that you can view the output of previous deployments. Because right now in Forge, you can only see the output of your most recent deployment. Mohammed is continuing to work on Spark. He's been on vacation the past couple of weeks, but he's going to be working on Spark. And I get questions about the sort of Spark, and I think I kind of forget that not everyone saw the Laracon Online talk back in August. And so Spark, people ask me, are we building Spark with Jetstream? And the answer is sort of yes and no. So we're building Spark as a standalone UI that does not require you to use Jetstream at all. So that was really kind of what I explained in my Laracon Online talk. Is one of the downfalls of the first generation of Spark was that it required you to sort of use Spark's own front end stack, which was Vue and Bootstrap and stuff like that. And we really wanted to get away from that if possible, so that people could use whatever front end stack they wanted on their own application. And then Spark sort of like Nova in a way ships with its own front end. built with whatever we want. In this case, it's built using Tailwind and Inertia. But your app could be anything. It could be plain Blade, it could be Livewire, or whatever. And when you go to your billing portal, it's like a separate screen. Kind of like the Stripe billing portal, basically. So that's the plan, really, is for it to, yes, it will integrate with Jetstream applications, but it will also integrate with non-Jetstream applications because it has its own, it ships with its own UI front end, its own assets, like pre-compiled and everything. Nuno is continuing to work on Laravel Vapor. We've kind of got a list of projects that he's going to work on. Just around deployment, logs, database sizes, and of course, we've been adding PHP 8 support to Vapor and Forge. That's launched actually already for Vapor and Forge, even though PHP itself is still just in the RC stage, the release candidate stage. And then War, who's kind of our newest team member at Laravel, is working exclusively on Nova. That's all he does, is focus on Laravel Nova, so that he can really focus on that and sort of just help us, one, knock out sort of our backlog of issues that we have filed, and then two, help us take on the next major set of features that we want to do as far as like our next major Nova release, which we have a list of over a dozen of those. So he's going to be helping us tackle that. And then I'll be working on a variety of stuff, helping with Spark some, and then working on Jetstream, working on documentation, stuff like that, open source stuff. So that's kind of what we've been up to here. We start that sprint next week, so should be pretty interesting to see how that goes. And I'm just going to hang out for like, 30 or 40 minutes and answer any questions y'all have and talk about whatever. Do I supervise all PRs? Yeah, I supervise every PR on the entire Laravel ecosystem, basically, other than Laravel Homestead. That's managed entirely by Joe Ferguson. But every other PR, I'm pretty sure for any other Laravel project, I'm the one that merges it or closes it. Is Spark going to work like Horizon or Telescope, like accessing it on a dedicated path? Yes, basically. There's a path that you can customize, but I think it's just at like /billing or something like that. Pretty generic URL, but I'm pretty sure that's customizable. An upgrade guide for Laravel Jetstream versions. People, this is one thing I would like people to kind of view differently about Laravel Jetstream. Laravel Jetstream is a scaffolding starting point, and after you install it and run it, or run the Jetstream install command, that's it. Like, all the files are yours now. There is no upgrading Jetstream from that point on. Of course, we would fix any bugs in the internal code of Jetstream, but like all the view files are yours, all the actions are yours, and those can't be updated, because you customize those. So there's not really, if there was a Jetstream 2, you don't really upgrade to Jetstream 2. You've already installed Jetstream, and it's your application, if that makes sense. Yeah, we are going to upgrade Jetstream to version Vue 3. Is it going to be support for multiple guards in Fortify? I'm not sure. If you need multiple guards, remember that Fortify is like an option. So go to laravel.com/docs and then go to authentication and then click on manually authenticating users. And you can just authenticate using auth attempt or whatever else you want. So if Fortify doesn't do exactly what you want, just write the authentication stuff yourself using those methods. Like it's still really a really quick process to write your own authentication stuff. Jetstream team external user invites. I've basically finished it. Pretty much finished it yesterday. I'm going to just kind of review it some today and tomorrow, and I'll probably ship that out pretty soon. But that's basically done. Will the next version of Nova support Livewire components? We've talked about like different ideas for the front end of Nova. Either something like Livewire, something like Inertia. Inertia is maybe a little bit less radical of a change for us since we're already using Vue. We're not totally sure. I mean, the goal there is really to make Nova more performant for models that have lots of relationships. There's other ways, other ideas we have for doing that without switching the front end stack at all. For example, you could have relationship panels that are sort of lazy loaded when you hover over them or click that they should be loaded. And before that, they're sort of blurred out with dummy, sort of like a dummy state. But I'm not sure, that's sort of a big undertaking if we were to do that. And it would have to really have a lot of benefits for end users because it would be a lot of work. So it's hard to say like what the payoff for that would be. I'm always sort of hesitant to take on like rewrites like that. Rewrites are usually just don't go very well in general. So, we would approach that with caution, I think. The process for collaborating with someone like David on Laravel Nova was really a pretty casual thing. So the backstory on Nova is that I had been asked for years, like, hey, you should build a Laravel admin panel. Why isn't there an admin panel? And I was like, I just didn't really understand why anyone would want an admin panel. I guess because I didn't really work on projects that I thought could benefit from one. But David is the one that kind of tried to really like sit down and explain it to me in person, really, at Laracon in New York. And the first go around, or maybe the second time in New York. I think we've been in New York 3 times. So maybe the second time in New York. And he's the one that kind of made me buy into it and made me understand it. And so we just decided to work on it together. It was a pretty just casual conversation of figuring that out. And he had actually built a prototype entirely in Blade that he was calling, what was it called? Beam, Laravel Beam. And he had it totally written kind of as a prototype. And we were trying to figure some stuff out, like how the relationship stuff would work. And that's when I prototyped the Vue version, but it was just very ugly and unstyled. And showed that to him, and that's kind of where we started. And then I wrote the entire back end while he kind of polished up the front end. The plan with Lumen is to just keep, updating it for every Laravel release. It is a micro framework, so we don't really add to it, by definition. But we always keep it updated and working with the latest Laravel release. I don't have any plans to add blocking users in Fortify or Jetstream. That's something that you could code for your own application. It's hard for me to say if Lumen gets enough love. Like, it's hard for me to know what that means. Like, does Slim get enough love, or does Sinatra and Ruby get enough love? They're sort of like done. They're sort of micro frameworks that are finished products. So they're micro frameworks in my mind don't, just by definition, don't receive a lot of new features because they're micro frameworks. So that's why, I don't know. I mean, Lumen is a tough subject for me because it's basically, as soon as we released it years ago, people were immediately like, you need to add this, and this. And basically it just became Laravel. I mean, but worse. So I think the idea is that, I don't know, it's tough because a lot of people start with it and then need to graduate from it. Um, why does why do I give more attention to Vue in Laravel instead of React? Um, Mainly just because Vue is what I really know. It's not really because it's necessarily better. I don't know if it's better or worse. I mean, I think it's really nice, but it's just what I know. So that's what I sort of have the skills to maintain and build. This year I was focusing on open source, but do I have any product ideas I intend to work on next year? So we actually do have an idea that's a little different than anything we've done in the past. I'm not sure if we'll tackle it at all, really. But you're right that this year I'm still just kind of focusing on open source. I don't really plan to work on that this year. Um, I'm pretty happy with what we have in the Laravel ecosystem right now in terms of the products I've put out there. They're really pretty much all the product ideas I ever envisioned from the beginning of Laravel. Like I always wanted the easy deployment stuff has sort of been realized. And so really we've been focusing on just really improving those existing things, and kind of taking care of what we have so they don't get neglected. Asynchronous programming in Laravel. I haven't looked into asynchronous stuff in PHP very much. I know that requires, extensions like the parallel extension, stuff like that. I also haven't looked much at Laravel or at stuff like Swool or PHP Process Manager. Um, a lot of frameworks aren't totally set up to run that way, because of the setup and teardown process that normally is in place in PHP. But I know some people have done it, successfully. I'm not sure what multi-tenancy hype is. All the apps that I run, people mean different things by multi-tenant, but all the apps I run, I consider multi-tenant because they have multiple users, but they're not multiple database. They all just have a single database. Svelte, I don't know anything about Svelte really, if that's how you say it. The JavaScript framework. I haven't really looked into it. Again, I really only know Vue, so that's really what I focus on. Preloading in Laravel. I guess that means like PHP 7.4 preloading. Yeah, that would be pretty cool if we could support that easily out of the box. I haven't looked at it a ton myself, so if anyone knows about it or has looked at it, that would be a cool thing to contribute. Has being a celebrity in PHP ever negatively impacted your everyday life? No, there's only been one or two times where I've run into someone in person around where I live that knew who I was. I think only one time actually. And I think they actually ran into my wife, Abigail, and they like recognized her and or overheard her talking to someone about what I do or something. And they were a Laravel user. But I don't think around Arkansas, I'm not sure I've ever run into anyone just like in the real world that recognized me or knew who I was or anything. Most people around here don't have any idea what I do. There's currently, let's see, hiring in Laravel. A lot of the hiring in Laravel has been from people that I was already involved with in open source. Like, for example, Mohammed, Dries, even James, I had known for several years before he ever worked at Laravel. Moir is also, someone that contributed a lot to Laravel for many years. So all these people were sort of people I knew, and there's other people that are really good contributors to Laravel that I would, if we ever needed to hire, I would be interested in hiring. But so far, that's kind of how it's worked out. Laravel elephants. Yeah, I would like to get more of those made. It's a little tricky handling those. They're kind of expensive to have made, which is fine because you can just sell them later. But there's, I would have to manage shipping them all myself or pay someone to manage shipping them for me. But it would be pretty cool to do new ones, especially if the logo has been updated a little bit. Definitely open to ideas for improving the Laravel Discord. Anything there. I really like Discord. I think it's really fast and quick. If you like Jetstream, but you need basic auth scaffolding, I would just, we updated Jetstream a bit. I'm not sure if you tried it since then, where it basically is just the login and registration screens and then the update password and logout stuff. It doesn't have by default, it doesn't have the API tokens or teams or profile photos or anything like that. So if you want it with minimal JavaScript, I would do that with the Livewire stack and then go from there, because you don't have to use Livewire in the rest of your app. 10-year celebration Laravel. I kind of forget. Well, yeah, next year is 10 years for Laravel. I probably started working on Laravel actually about 10 years ago around this time, because I worked on it for a while before I released it, and it was in the fall. So it's actually probably, for me, it's been about 10 years since I've been working on Laravel, but since it's been released would be, of course, June or July 2021. So that would be cool to do a celebration there. We were able to get into the GitHub discussion beta for one of the repos. I think it was Laravel Framework. That's been pretty nice so far. Why do I continue to use Sublime Text? It's just, I don't know. I just love it. It's just so fast and quick. I still get PHP like error highlighting, and I can import, namespace references and stuff like that. And I can do PHP CS Fixer, which is like one key press. So I don't know. It just still works out pretty well for me. I think part of that is because since I wrote the framework, I sort of know where stuff is. So I don't have to use I don't use jumping to classes and stuff like that a lot, because I sort of am really quick at going to where it's supposed to be. So maybe that's one reason why stuff like PHP Storm doesn't really resonate with me as much. But yeah, I don't know. I'm still just a pretty big Sublime fan. What are my views around the Laravel community in Africa? Africa is a really big Laravel community, actually. Really proud of everything they've done there. Huge meetups, super big meetups, bigger than I've ever seen in the United States. Inertia versus Livewire, which one do I like best? Gosh, that's kind of why Jetstream has both, and I was so torn. I think at first I was gonna build the scaffolding with just Livewire, but then I liked Inertia so much too that I just decided to do both, because I thought they were both really good options. Um, they both just have their own unique set of benefits. Livewire is really nice because you don't have any build step in terms of your Java, obviously your JavaScript. So you don't have to run npm run watch and stuff like that, which makes for really kind of convenient development cycle. And then of course, Inertia is nice because you have the full power of Vue, and Vue is pretty stinking powerful in terms of front end templating and building a front end. So it's pretty nice. But I think inertia improves. Like I wrote Laravel Vapor. I think, like I said on the last little chat, that I wrote it as like a Vue SPA. And I think inertia is a better development experience. If you have a mono repo of all your backend and front end code in one repository, I think inertia is a better development experience in that case, because the routing can be handled server side, which I think is just, I like Laravel's router better than using Vue router. The data retrieval is more efficient typically, because you can hydrate all the data in sort of one request. It handles some other stuff that I found kind of painful in SPAs, like making sure all the data is hydrated before like the Vue updates and then avoiding pop in and loading states and stuff like that is kind of annoying in Vue SPAs, in my opinion. And inertia handles that really well as well. No, I don't necessarily have any plans to refactor Vapor to use inertia, because I think I always try to take on things like that. Like, is that what's going to benefit end users? You know what I mean? So refactoring Vapor to inertia doesn't really help end users that much, and it would take a lot of time on our end. So that's why I would avoid that kind of project. Like for me, I'm always weighing the benefit of stuff in terms of how is it going to benefit the average user's life. Which feature of Laravel am I most proud of? God, there's been a lot of cool features over the years. I think Laravel's queue system is probably one of the most robust queue systems in open source, in any language, really. It's basically Sidekick Pro's feature set, except free. And Sidekick Pro costs money in Ruby. But I think we've done a lot of work there, and I think that was a cool feature. I mean, I think Eloquent's really probably one of the most productive features as well. Event broadcasting, I think, is really cool. Those are some of my favorite features. Laravel Echo, stuff like that. Livewire doesn't really make me have any like thoughts on the future of Laravel itself, because at the end of the day, it's still kind of an external package. And so we don't really build Laravel around like external packages. We sort of just build the features that, I mean, mainly, Laravel is very community driven at this point in terms of a lot of the features are driven by PRs at this point. So no, we don't really steer Laravel based on Livewire or inertia. Sometimes Jonathan or Caleb will reach out to me and say, "Hey, it would make my life a lot easier if I had this little method or this little change," and so we can think about that. But we're not making like big decisions based on that. We don't build apps for like we're not Laravel doesn't do any like consulting type stuff. We don't build apps for other companies. The Laravel logo was originally a set of Lego blocks on the Laravel 1 website, and everything has kind of been an iteration on that since. So it's still kind of a blocky type logo, building block type thing. Event mute. I'm not. So it's like muting a specific listener, I think, is what you're saying. I think so. Like you could already kind of solve that. I didn't want to get too deep into technical stuff necessarily, but just quickly, I think you could solve that by putting or mocking that listener, and then the mock would get called when the event is fired. But maybe you're saying you want to sort of make that an easier API using the event mute stuff. Kind of interesting. Could be interesting contribution. Cashier support for Braintree was archived because none of us use Braintree. We don't really know anything about building applications with Braintree in like a first-hand experience kind of way. So we just decided to stop maintaining that because, I mean, we would just be guessing at how to best build that for people. Betting API on Laravel making 6 digits a month. That's pretty good. Pretty good. Congratulations on that. Not much contact exists between Laravel and Symphony. I mean, not for any particular reason, but just like Symphony kind of does their thing, and we look at the changes or the upgrades we would need to make and stuff like that. There's been a couple times where we've given feedback, I think, on, hey, this would be a really inconvenient change or whatever. But in general, there's just not a lot of contact there. We both just kind of do our thing and it works out. And, you know, Symphony is really well maintained and documented and stuff. So we don't really have any issues there. The command bus still exists in Laravel. That's why you have like bus fake and stuff like that. All of the features of the command bus are still there, actually, even separate commands and handlers. I just don't think we emphasize it really in the documentation, mainly because the command bus idea was always kind of a, I don't want to say it was a bad idea, but I think it's a little bit heavy-handed in terms of, I wouldn't go so far as to say it's over-engineered, but it's just a little heavy-handed. I'll put it that way in terms of, I'm not sure it's totally always necessary to have these separate commands and handlers. However, if you feel like it is, like maybe maybe it is for your particular context, your application, everything is still there and basically still has the same syntax. Any plans to rebuild Laravel without dependencies on any other framework? Which, I mean, I think they mean dependencies on Symphony. So our main Symphony dependency really, in terms of every request that you get to your application, is Illuminate or Symphony HTTP Foundation, and then Symphony Console, of course, for Artisan. It would be theoretically possible, of course, to move away from those, or we could even fork those if we didn't like the direction they were going. But there's no plans to do that right now because everything's been pretty smooth and no big issues there. Laravel versus Ruby on Rails thoughts. I never used Ruby on Rails, honestly, so I couldn't compare them. You know, I couldn't compare them from firsthand experience. I don't know what a community version of Nova is. I guess they mean like open sourcing it. No, there's no plans to open source Nova. I'm not sure if there's other open source admin panels out there for Laravel, but if there is, maybe I guess you could use those instead. Yeah, I think there's some things in PHP 8 that are pretty cool. The weak maps is cool. Attributes are kind of interesting and could let us do some things. Symphony has already made some changes for attributes, and we'll probably make similar changes, I think, where you can attribute a type hint for like the current user. So it would basically let you type hint into a controller method if you wanted like app models user, but you can add an attribute to that that's current user so that it injects the currently authenticated user. So you can already do this sort of by type hinting the authenticatable interface, but the downside to that is you don't really get the IDE support because you're using the interface instead of your own model. So stuff like that could be done. PHP Fig, I feel like, has sort of served its purpose. And I think, you know, I think Fabian from Symphony kind of felt the same way. Like PSR 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe you include 7, maybe not. But those are sort of, to me, the main PR or the main PSRs that PHP needed, you know, to really just solidify some core things on how we're going to auto load classes, how we're going to even format code. I think those PSRs were helpful and really beneficial. But I'm not sure there's any real use for that kind of thing anymore. I think the real problems have been solved. And a lot of the PSR stuff lately feels more like implementations, not like, you know, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but not really like standards like that. Why are the Laravel docs and the docs from Nova Jetstream differently styled? So those docs that you're referring to, like Nova and Jetstream, those run on ViewPress. And we put those on a separate website because they're versioned separately. And to be honest, if we were doing everything kind of the best way or properly, I think even the docs for like Cashier, Horizon, Socialite, those would all be on separate websites as well, because the versioning is not connected. So like the Laravel framework docs are versioned based on the framework version, but Socialite and Horizon and all that, they have their own versions and they change differently than the Laravel framework does. So really they all need to be sort of on their own sites if we're going to version them properly. I really like Star Trek Discovery. I really like season 3, episode 1, but I even like seasons 1 and 2 as well. I thought it's a really cool show. The Laravel site itself is not on ViewPress. The Laravel site is Laravel. It's a Laravel application, but those other docs websites like Jetstream and Nova, stuff like that, those are all ViewPress. The next product. We only really have one product idea that we kind of tossed around. I don't even know if we'll do it, like I said. But other than that, I mean, we're mainly focusing on what we have: Forge, Vapor, Envoyer, Nova, stuff like that. I feel like those are the key pieces of the Laravel world have kind of been built. So we're just really trying to refine those, perfect those, get them really nice. Official CMS. We still haven't really made any serious plans to do that. A bundle-like system for Laravel. I'm not sure I totally follow what that would be. What is my highest rank ever in Rocket League? So in 2v2, my highest rank ever is Champ 1, but honestly, I'm usually Diamond 3. And yes, still play, sadly. Yeah, feedback on Laravel Forge or any of the Laravel products can go usually in the support chat thing, which sends us an email on Help Scout. Is my mic not using my AirPods? Is it using my monitor? I thought Nuno's RSC was cool. I mean, multi-line short closures that automatically import the variables. I thought that was pretty cool. I haven't really kept up with the response to it, but you know, if it got shot down, that's kind of sad because that would have been a sort of a nice feature. I don't love doing surveys for products because I always just build what I personally want to build, honestly. So like Vapor, I was really interested in serverless. I thought it would be really cool if we had an auto scaling sort of mega scale Laravel platform. And so that's what I was personally interested in, and that's what I worked on. But with a survey, It's just like I don't really like working on stuff like that. I want to work on something that I'm personally passionate about. Pressure from other companies which build similar products. I mean, there's always been similar products to everything I built. When Forge first came out, there wasn't a ton of similar products to that I can remember. It felt pretty unique at first, but there was quickly similar products for sure. Definitely for Nova, of course, there's similar products, but we just always kind of do our thing and do the best that we can, and it works out how it works out. But we don't spend a ton of time thinking about it. Of course, we want to make sure that we're sort of competitive in terms of the features, but it's not something we really think about on a daily basis for sure. Do I think serverless is catching up? Vapor, it's performing about like how I expected, actually. A little bit better than I expected, but I always knew that Forge would be sort of the big dog and always have higher amounts of users and numbers than Vapor, just because most applications don't need huge amounts of scaling and on demand queue workers and stuff like that. Most applications, matter of fact, most applications are fine running just on a very small server, even shared with other applications. And a lot of people use Forge that way to run 20 sites on one server or whatever. So I always knew that Forge would be the more popular, but Vapor's done well, I would say. I mean, let me think. It's probably like 20% the size of Forge. So it's 1/5 of the size of Forge in terms of users, but I mean, it's still got thousands of users, and thousands and hundreds of thousands of deployments. But again, I think it's just a matter of most applications don't need it. It's really nice when you do, when you're running something pretty large scale. Either, I mean, you can use Vapor for two reasons. You can use it because you need a lot of scale, or you can use it because you don't ever want to think about servers or maintaining servers or operating system upgrades or stuff like that. So I would probably use it for the second reason, actually. I've never built anything that needs, um, the kind of scale that you can achieve with Lambda, but I also hate thinking about servers and upgrades and stuff like that. So that's why I would use Vapor. There's not really any big plans to support different languages on Forge or Vapor. That would be a pretty tough thing to do. We know PHP, that's sort of our specialty. So I don't really know the ins and outs of running other languages. Laravel's new user growth seems pretty steady, like it has been for years. Seems to be still growing. I think it's smart to outreach and promote Laravel, especially in, like Brian mentioned, and stuff like schools and stuff like that, because I always wanted to position Laravel sort of at, or make it be a natural starting point for PHP development. So when you first get into web development, I think PHP is already sort of a natural thing to use because it's easy to set up, it's free. It doesn't have a lot of complicated, build steps or anything like that. Um, and if we can make that easier through stuff like Valet or Homestead or Docker type stuff like Chris Fidal's Vessel, then that's even better. But I want Laravel to sort of be, if you choose PHP, I think I want Laravel to be the obvious choice for where to start. And promoting it and stuff like schools and stuff kind of gets people started early and gets them into the ecosystem early. So I think that's a smart idea and stuff that it's something that I've done in the past. We used to have Elasticsearch as a default search provider in Laravel Scout, but like no one could agree on how it should work. So eventually I just kind of threw my hands up and was like, the community can maintain this, because we were getting PRs constantly, switching stuff back and forth, debating on how things should work. So I just left that to be an open source package. I don't think Vapor will ever support any other providers. Well, I don't want to say never, but in the foreseeable future, it won't support any providers other than Amazon, just because, supporting Amazon was a big undertaking. Honestly, it would be a huge amount of work to support other providers. The reasoning for the addition of the models folder was just how many times it had been requested. And then I did that poll on Twitter, do you want a models folder? And it was like over 80% said they use a models folder. So that's kind of the point of Laravel, is to solve for the 80%, 90% use case. So if that amount of people are using a models directory, then, we might as well have one, I guess. I agree the Lumen website probably needs to be updated a little bit. As far as the GitHub repo, kind of like I said earlier, it's a micro framework, so we don't add a lot of stuff to it. I wouldn't take that as a sign that it's like dead or anything. It's just we don't add stuff to it because it's a small micro framework. How do we stay productive? I don't know. I just work a pretty normal work schedule. I work 8 to 5, and I try to keep myself pretty organized. I use Todoist a lot, Basecamp, Notion, stuff like that, and just come into work and get cracking. At some point, there's some amount of peer pressure to work on Laravel, because when you have thousands and thousands of followers, if you're not doing anything, like, they're going to call you out on it for sure. So I kind of have to stay productive. I don't think there's any plans to do like a Laravel 1 bundle similar to one, mainly because it would be just a lot of work to implement. The billing systems are all totally separate systems. They don't even have access to each other. So it would be pretty tricky to do. It would have to be the best we could ever do would be some sort of like coupon that gets you access to all the services or something. Typically, a Nova license can be upgraded if you would just email support or something. Motivation to work on projects. I think there's sort of two aspects of that. So there's motivation and there's discipline. So at some point, you're going to have one or the other. So like you're going to have discipline because you're not always going to have motivation. And sometimes you have to work on things even when you have no motivation, and that's just how life is. You know what I mean? So like sometimes I just don't feel like working on things. So like yesterday actually is a good example. I was working on the team invitation stuff on Jetstream, and I kind of finished up the outside user team invitations, and I had on my Notion checklist to finish out writing the test for it. And I was like, it was like 3:30 in the afternoon, and I was like, I just don't really want to do that. And then like, I don't know, some part of me, like the discipline part of me internally was like, stop being a baby, you know what I mean? And just like, we're going to write these tests. And so I just like cracked it out. I didn't really feel like it, to be honest. But it honestly didn't take as long as I expected once I got started. And that's usually the case. Like once you can get like over the initial inertia of like getting the ball rolling on something, then it's a lot easier. But because sometimes you're going to have motivation, especially like when you first start and you're kind of riding that high of like the excitement of working on something. You're going to be super motivated, so you're going to work on it. But that's going to fade over time. So if you don't build up like discipline in yourself, and this is not just a programming thing, you know what I mean? Like this applies in life. But if you don't have any discipline, then it's going to be tough to keep going. Another strategy I use kind of that just came to mind is I always try to tackle, especially on a new project, like something like Vapor, I tackle a lot of the hardest stuff first. The stuff that I think is going to be the most challenging, the hardest to figure out. because one, your motivation is kind of higher at the beginning anyway, so you're like already motivated to work on it. But then two, I think it's common to lose motivation when you start working on a new project. You sort of do all the easy stuff first, and then you get to a hard thing, and your motivation is already kind of like fizzling out. And then you hit the hard thing, and then it's just like bam, and you're done, kind of hitting a brick wall. So I think by doing the hard stuff first while you're still kind of motivated is good because one, you can knock it out early, and then two, if you I like to do it first because if I fail at it or there's some just like roadblock that's like, this is just not going to be possible to move past, then I fail early. You know what I mean? And to me, that's nice because I would rather fail at a project in the first week than to work on it for 4 months or for 4 weeks and then hit some roadblock and then fail. And then now I've lost 4 weeks. So that's why I like to always do the hardest stuff first or the stuff that I think is going to be the most challenging. Basically, so that I'm not wasting time. If I fail, I would rather fail early than fail late. The tests on Laravel Vapor run not super long. I mean, a minute or two. Mainly because every product I built is so hard to test. Like Vapor, I have to make actual calls to AWS, to really test that. I mean, in terms of like really testing it 100%. And AWS has no sandbox mode at all. So like when I was testing the domain purchase feature, I actually had to purchase domains like in my tests, and then like 2 or 3 times actually, and then turn those tests off with like a annotation. But that kind of stuff was kind of annoying. And every product I've written feels that way. Like they all have so much interaction with servers and external services. It's such a pain to test. Someday I want to build something that's like totally insulated, and doesn't talk to any other service so that I can just test it really quickly. I've got like 2 or 3 minutes here, trying to tackle just a couple more questions before I head out for the day. I don't really know anything about Swool. I know what it is, but I've never used it or have any advice there. Let's see. This is the only new merch that I've got recently. The baseball hat. I had a hoodie made, and I got it in. I didn't really love it, so I'm gonna, try a different kind of hoodie for that for winter. Open docs for another language, like Vue did. I'm not sure I totally follow that. The docs are open source. Oh, I guess they mean translation. So anyway, it's tough. I mean, anyone's free to translate them, obviously, and put them online. It's hard for us to maintain that officially because even when we used to have translations of like the language files, and people that spoke the same language would disagree on how things should be worded. And obviously, I don't speak the language, so I didn't even know whose side to take. You know what I mean? So that's why I think it's best if it's just managed by the community outside of the official Laravel organization. I don't think I'm limiting the stream by country, or at least I didn't intend to. Ooh, that's a lot of questions. Can I use Laravel for big government complicated web apps? You can definitely use Laravel for very complicated web apps. Laravel is built for building anything from a very small application to something very complex. Like that's why we put a lot of work into the dependency injection container, to the queue system, to the testing layer. All of that is sort of to be a foundation for building very complex stuff. I don't know how Laravel will look 10 years from now. That's like, one, I didn't know Laravel would still be around 10 years from 10 years ago. I didn't know if anyone would use Laravel at all. And, it's just so hard to say how PHP will evolve, how the web will evolve. Like, even just a couple of years ago, like something like Livewire, I couldn't really have pictured that Laravel world taking off like it had, or something like Inertia, or I mean, even like Tailwind. Like a couple of years ago, there were frameworks like that, but they didn't really have the mind share in the Laravel ecosystem, so to speak. So a lot of that stuff changes the trajectory of like Laravel and what it looks like. So it's hard to say what will happen in the next 10 years. What ideas will people in the community come up with? I mean, that's going to be a big driver. Hopefully the community stays really interested and excited. And that's sort of, part of my job, I think, and why I like doing these sort of chats is just to sort of engage with people, keep Laravel exciting, and keep new people coming into Laravel that have fresh ideas and fresh packages, stuff like that. So I don't know. It partly depends, on me, obviously, what we build, but I think a big chunk of it depends on what other people build too. I mean, some of the most exciting Laravel projects haven't been built by me. So, it's an interesting thing. It's hard to predict, but I'm excited to see how it pans out. Ooh, we need to get Laravel Fortify's docs converted to probably to a ViewPress site like Jetstream, and then link it on the official website. All right, so I'll probably wrap up here. I've got a meeting at 10, not code related, but thanks for hanging out. Hopefully this was helpful. Next time, maybe I'll change up the Hangout, have a different theme, and do something different. If you have any ideas, just tweet them to me, anything you like or don't like or want to hear about. And I'll see y'all next time.